and what I gotta do something with these cameras. Well, I think it's probably all right. Okay, so here we are. It looks like I'm the first one, and this I thought was pretty awesome. This was an interesting CTF. They decided to hunt down real missing people using open source intelligence, and they found a bunch of leads which they passed on to the police in Australia. So they don't have the results yet, but it sounds like a great idea to me.
They did something like that at DEF CON.
Oh, did they? I didn't know that.
Yeah. They had a workshop there that I thought was really cool.
Yeah. Oh, good. Anyway, so I guess you got one here. Oh, yeah, this one, the fake checkmate.
Yeah, so this is pretty interesting because the checkmate developer told me about this actually, because he's like, all right, well, we're already getting fakes. Basically, these hackers set up a site where they trick people into thinking it's the actual jailbreak, but really it's they use it to install malware on the phone instead of doing the actual jailbreak. So that was kind of interesting.
I'd heard about this years ago, but I'd never seen it before, that they use this thing where they load a profile on your phone, allowing you to sideload apps. So you can trick people into installing apps that didn't come from the store if they approve something. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, this kind of thing, this isn't the first time it's happened, and I'm sure it won't be the last, but it's interesting the speed at which things like this will pop up.
It shows all the buzz around Checkmate. I've got some more of that coming later.
Yeah.
So yeah, the pseudo one, Irvin, we should talk about this. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone found the way to get to root. As long as the user is restricted from being in pseudo, we were trying this out yesterday during the security ad conference on a Docker image, and found that it doesn't automatically give you root if you're just not in the group. There has to be a certain, like, your user has to be set up a certain way, and then that will work.
Yeah, that's why Caitlin tried it, and we found out the same thing. It's not as important at all. A normal machine will not have this problem. It's only if you tried to use sudo to make it sort of half administrator that can execute some commands and not others, that in fact it's full administrator. So it sounds awesome, but it's really not that important.
Yeah. Yeah, at first it's like, oh, what? Sudo doesn't work? Oh, no. Yeah.
Well, there was one like it about 8 years ago in Solaris, where you could do rlogin to any server as root, and it would forget to check the password entirely for about a year. That was bloody awesome. You could be root on anything for a year. But this one's not that extreme.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of things about Checkmate that I thought was wonderful. Everybody's loving Checkmate. There's a cartoon that came from AxiomX that's pretty good. And really, it's hard to understand Checkmate. I was even talking to AxiomX about it. I couldn't get it straight because we know AxiomX. And a permanent unpatchable boot ROM exploit. But the point is, it doesn't mean that people can read your user data, at least not easily. All it means is they could examine the OS. So it's great for jailbreakers and researchers. And people are worried. Now, one thing that came up on the Steve Gibson podcast, which I'm not sure he's right about this, but he might be. He said you could jailbreak your phone with Checkmate and then sideload an app that's not from the store and then reboot it and let it go back to normal, and the app would still be there. I am not sure that's true. I think that is probably not true because you can't really log in without the user's passcode. My impression is that it's actually hard to use this to do anything that would steal the user's data, but I'm not quite sure. Anyway, one thing I think is absolutely right is Apple's going to sell a lot of new phones because you have to buy new hardware not to have this. And even if it is like that pseudo thing, something that really isn't a risk, it sounds bad. And the other thing, of course, is the researchers love it because now we can finally get in the OS. I've been irritated by that. That's why my mobile device hacking class has mostly been Android, because for years I haven't been able to get into the guts of iOS, and now I can. So I love it just like everybody else. And that means that we'll be finding more security problems in iOS because Apple can't hide them from us. So that will make iOS more like an open source product like Android, which they really don't like. So if I was Apple, I would say, well, it's time to just force everyone to go to the next generation of hardware and make them all buy a new phone. That would be the cure. And I think, anyway, we'll see what happens. But realistically, I think, Microsoft did this. Where their security model was terrible until XP. Then they put out Vista. Then they issued a warning saying, if you have anything before XP Service Pack 2, throw it away. We don't support it. Get rid of it entirely. And Apple could do that. It could say anything before the iPhone 10R or whatever it is, just throw it away. And we'll see what comes of it all. But everybody agrees that this checkmate thing is the most important exploit ever for iOS, a total game changer. So anyway.
Yeah.
Thing is bad publicity.
Yeah, Apple's really not saying much about this.
Well, I think it was inevitable because he got it by doing a binary difference on the Apple patch. So just like everybody's always said, when you put out the patch, you are leaking information about the phone. So you really cannot expect the vulnerability to stay secret for long once you put out the patch. Anyway, so that was this one. Now we're down to, a new treaty. Yeah, so what do you want to tell us about this one, Liz?
This is just kind of the another chapter in the ongoing story of governments insisting that we need backdoors and everything to save the children.
Yeah.
The U.S. and the U.K. are on the precipice of signing a treaty that would force social media and other companies to add encryption backdoors into their products. They want to use what they would call a ghost protocol, which basically, as they put in the they said in the article, it inserts an extra end in the end-to-end encryption, which is the cops basically. So they would be able to look at everything you're transmitting. So it's interesting to see how this one's going. We'll see if it gets signed or not, but probably a fairly good chance of that happening.
From the article, it was not clear to me that this law will really cause that. It might just mean that you have to turn over whatever you have, so the only thing you get would be metadata. It's not like Kalia, where they absolutely have to make a backdoor. But it's not very clear.
Well, they're still pushing. They're definitely pushing for that, and several of our legislators are pushing for it real hard too.
Oh yes, they're always looking for it here, and I must say I'm always the unpopular fascist because I think the cops kind of have a point. There is a lot of rotten stuff on the internet, and they really would like to have some way to examine data with a search warrant. So we'll see what happens. That's why I saw a careful open letter from law enforcement. I heard about it on the podcast, Steve Gibson. I thought it sounded pretty good. He hated it, of course. But they said, we have criminals on the internet. There's bad stuff happening. We really would like to have some way for you to respond to a search warrant. And I don't think that's completely wrong. There's a sort of 95% of the security community seems to be saying, absolutely not. We're going to lock everybody out of everything. And I'm just not so sure. I guess I'm an old-fashioned fascist. I think there's a certain amount of crime that you would like to stop. And just locking everybody out of everything gives free range to any amount of crime. I'm not so sure. But the technical cryptographer's argument is that there is no way to put in a backdoor without it shattering the whole thing like glass. And
Right.
Unfortunately, in practice, that appears to be true, that the cops can't keep the secret well enough, and
Right.
it ends up leaking out. But I wonder
Right.
if there's a technical solution for that. Anyway, we're not moving any closer to it.
I mean, I'm of two minds about it in that, to some extent, I can see the point, but I can also see it being a slippery slope, and having it end up like China, where every single communication is monitored, and I'm not sure that's a great idea either.
Well, yeah, that's right. We need to find the happy medium. But all the technical people seem to be absolutely demanding 100% of one extreme. And I think that is not going to be a winner, because what happens is, if that's all you give law enforcement, they will just pay somebody like Cellebrite to just hack in and take what they want without your help. So, it's just like any security model. You can demand some extreme compliance and be a total failure, or you can make a compromise, and then you actually have some control.
Sure. I think part of it too is that other services will always exist outside of these main platforms, and they just can't. I just don't think they can keep up long enough that a truly motivated criminal is going to find a way.
But this is the same thing with cheaters in Clash. You're never going to catch the smart ones. You're only going to catch the dumb ones, which is most of them.
That's true.
Most are not technical, and they will just use Facebook or something. And so the FBI says, why do you make the ordinary average thing so secure that we can't get in at all, when there could be this, this obscure open source thing that's hard to use for people who really want privacy? Normal people don't really want privacy that much.
That's a good point.
Right.
And normal people really do expect to be able to recover their password, and they expect the cops to find out who's harassing their kid and stuff like that. They would probably be happier with something less secure.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Either way, I think our field will still have employment, whether it's the extreme of we're going to lock everybody out or the other way around. I think we're still good.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So that was, I lost my place. We down here? Yeah. Oh, the CCPA. I really want to learn more about this. The California privacy law. This starts in January.
So it's basically GDPR for California, where if you're in California, businesses have to honor California residents' request to access, delete, or opt out of sharing information.
Right.
To me, the thing that I sent out the PDF, they did basically a survey and found that only 2% of firms are ready for this law that takes effect in January. I don't see that as a surprise at all.
Well, but what I didn't really, I never really understood is exactly what does this thing require that is so difficult?
I think it's like GDPR. Let me see. I have the bill up actually. The people in California have to say okay to selling their personal information, access to it, who it's getting sold to, and what information is being collected by them.
So you just change your terms of service and make them click OK. Why is that so difficult?
I guess because you have to track them. Are they in California or are they elsewhere?
Well, you could just make it that way for everyone.
Right, just like GDPR. Everyone is in Europe, so let's just do it that way.
Yeah. I just wonder what the problem is. It doesn't sound that onerous.
It also sounds fairly weak in terms of actual protections. Yeah. But that doesn't surprise me at all because, this law has been in formation. They've been working on it for quite some time. And at first it was a lot more strict, I would say. There were a lot more constraints to it, but it's really been watered down to the point where I think it is going to come down to a checkbox on everything. And it will just be, yes, you agree for us to sell your data to XYZ private company.
Yep.
And people will click OK because they want to use the product. So
of course, yeah.
Right. Because good luck trying to track everybody and keep track of who's in California and who isn't. And maybe somebody has a VPN and they're not in California, and it's just going to get hairy.
Like previous drafts of this law included provisions like you have to be able to send a delete request for all of your data. Right. You have to be able to request a dump of all of your data that they've kept on you, et cetera, et cetera. But
now that would explain why only 2% of them are compliant, because that would be a lot of work.
Right. Well, it sounds like they've excised all of the actual sensible things from this law. So,
yep. This last one I was quite excited about. It just broke this morning. This is Chainalysis, and I wondered I heard of Chainalysis a while ago. These guys have a commercial service that will analyze the Bitcoin blockchain for law enforcement, and this is their first big success. They shut down the largest ever child porn site. They arrested 337 people. And they did it by analyzing the blockchain. So they started, the site had like 1 million addresses that they would put there. And they would say, if you send us money, use one of these addresses that we will give you. And they make sure that address is never used again to make you anonymous. And people would bounce it through others, but they would go to the exchange and then submit a court order demanding that the exchange tell us what they know about this person. So they would find the next address and the next address. And the exchanges have know your customer regulations where they actually have to have a real credit card or driver's license or something of people that put money in the exchange. And they were able to find real identities of these people through the Bitcoin blockchain. So this is what I've been waiting for, because for years I've been saying it's insane to do crime on Bitcoin because you have a permanent record of everything you do.
Right.
And the only reason the cops don't catch you is because it takes them a while to improve their technology to do it. But in principle, it's all just sitting there for anybody to see who gave that money to who. And apparently that's true now. But this commercial product is apparently really working. And man, this would be a good company to invest in. They've got a real product that's going to be a hit here. And this will, of course, I think ultimately promote products like Zcash that really try much harder to anonymize things and to make it harder for chain analysis to do this. But they claim they can do this on like 15 blockchains so far. And ultimately, I think almost all of them will have this ability, except I think for a few, like Zcash, which is supposedly extremely anonymous.
We'll see. We'll see how anonymous is.
Yes. Ultimately, and this is why we have all the money laundering and know your customer laws. The part where you turn it into real money, that part is regulated heavily, like a bank, and they actually want to know who's doing what there. And this is why they can ultimately find out who's doing what, even if they do it with Bitcoin. And like I say, this is like these messaging services and Facebook and everything. The cops have reasons to track down who's doing what. And it's not wrong it's not right to just lock them out entirely as if there was no crime happening on these platforms.
Right.
Anyway, so now we got hacking airplanes.
Yeah, I thought this was pretty cool. Raytheon is working on a product right now to basically monitor the control systems of planes and probably a couple other vehicles so that the pilots can know in real time, theoretically, whether there is traffic that shouldn't be there on their systems. It's interesting because apparently one of the real drivers for this product was that they've started putting USB ports on stuff like planes and tanks and things. And, what could go wrong? If you plug some random USB sticks into your $20 million tank or aircraft.
Well, that's what Sid Dragon said. He said he could plug in the USB by his seat and affect the flight of an airplane.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few different exploits. There was another guy that a few years back that said that he'd come up with a way that he could take control of the plane through his Android device. I mean, and I think that there's definitely a huge market for this. Now, I'm skeptical of what the initial iterations of this product are going to be like, because usually it takes some time to reach maturity and be actually useful. But I think it's definitely a good step in the right direction.
It might. I love the demonstration. The demonstration is someone hacks into the plane so it crashes, and now an intrusion alert lights up before it crashes. Well, that was a lot of use.
Right.
Wait, telling the public somebody just hacked your plane is, so now what? What am I supposed to do about that?
Right.
Yeah.
This is the problem with all IDSs. Like people say FireEye should have protected Target. And the people at that time said, I have FireEye, and it gives you 10,000 alerts a day. That's useless.
Right.
You have to get the information they can use, and that's much harder.
Exactly. That's why I say, I'm skeptical of the initial iterations, because it really takes some time to get there.
Yeah, if it was me, I would not even be alerting the pilot at all. I would just be focusing on integrity solutions to make sure that the software fixes itself or prevents intrusion, but I wouldn't bother the pilot with anything unless you actually have something of value to tell them.
Well, it cracked me up because, of course, this is in the register, which comes with its own pre-built snark in the articles. And
Which is what makes it great.
yes, exactly. And it was saying that during the sales demo, the engineers ran a simulation of a helicopter flight, and they injected malware from a tablet, and then the pilot at least got to see a red alert titled "Cyber Anomaly" before he crashed and burned.
Yeah.
So,
The last thing you know before you die. Oh, it's cyber attack.
Yeah.
right.
That's the thing. Yep.
So I mean, but I think it's a good start, and you know, you need the IDS before you can start automating defenses. So hopefully they're working on that part now.
Well, you can't take it seriously unless it has AI and a blockchain.
Yes.
Anyway, it ought to have quasi-prime numbers too.
Right. You know, if you really want to be complete about it, sure.
So here's the kittens are back in town. I was happy to see this one. This is the
the Iranian group, APT group.
Yeah.
They're back in action, and this PDF kind of covers their current vectors of using links pretending to be Google Drive, a text message, login attempts, and social network impersonations. Pretty interesting stuff to see how they're working.
Well, the thing I want to see here is, since we are not bothering to secure our elections and everything is vulnerable, I was hoping we might get a balance of power here. So now we got the Russians hacking us to promote Trump, and we got the Iranians hacking us to stop Trump. So maybe it'll all work out.
Right? It'll all even out.
Because they're attacking Trump. Because the Iranians, of course, hate Trump. He canceled the Iranian nuclear deal. They want a Democrat. The Russians love Trump. So maybe it'll all balance out.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see, you know, one of the most salient points, I think, of pulling out and kind of leaving the Kurds to their own devices is the fact that they're basically turning 10,000 ISIS terrorists loose on the planet. So I'm kind of interested to see if there are any lasting repercussions from that.
That's not going to come back to bite us.
I mean, what could go wrong?
Yeah, what could go wrong?
I was explaining this to students and say the thing about China is, unlike the United States, they actually think about the future and they make careful statements and careful moves. Like they said, why don't they just get Chinese hackers to hack and expose Trump's tax returns? And I say, that's the difference between the United States and China. They don't do stupid things like that that are going to blow back in a few years. They make careful moves.
Plus, it's in China's interest to keep that moron in office because they're benefiting from us. I mean, I was talking to an economist about this because I wondered about, you know, I noticed that the Chinese yuan was pretty weak against the U.S. dollar for as weak as it's been in several years. And I said, you know, actually, that's by design because it gives them a competitive trade advantage outside of the country. And I'm like, actually, that makes a ton of sense.
Well, yes, but I don't think they want Trump in there. I think the Chinese are very upset by Trump. They cannot figure him out. They don't know what he wants. He changes his mind. The things I've read have said that the Chinese leadership are very unhappy with Trump. They would rather have somebody thoughtful and careful in their statements. They're reading all of Trump's tweets and trying to find the meaning of the hidden code words. And this is a waste of your time with Trump. He just spouts out nonsense.
Right. They're trying to play a chess game with somebody who's just building Legos and just building random stuff.
That's right.
It has no meaning.
I think they would much rather deal with someone like Obama or Hillary, who is also carefully saying things and making long-term plans.
Right.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I guess that's it. Any final remarks?
Nope.
No.
Okay, well, I'll post this. I'll see you folks next week.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. See you guys next week.
Yep.
Yeah.